quick read that Hi guys, I'm Amy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a reading wrap up for all of you. I have 5 books to chat about, 3 of which lingered for a very, very long time, and the latter 2 which I read rather quickly, 1 of which I read in a single sitting. So if you guys are interested in the books that I've read lately, then go ahead and keep on watching. We will go ahead and start with a book that I originally began in November but didn't finish until the end of December, and that is Girl Waits with Gun by Emily Stewart. This is the first book in a series that is the Cop Sisters series. This is a Cop Sisters novel, and the main sister in which we are following is Constance Cop. She's the oldest of 3 sisters. Her other 2 sisters are Norma and Florette. Florette is quite a bit younger than Norma and Constance, and right from the get-go in this book, we are introduced to the main crux of the problem, and that is that they get hit, their wagon gets hit, and they are in an accident when a local wealthy gangster type dude hits them with his car. And that is the main plot throughout this story, of them trying to resolve this issue, get the money to replace/repair the wagon that was broken, and it involves the sheriff and mysteries and secrets. And this book is very, very, very researched. It takes place in, do I know what year? I feel like I should know this. 1915, in Massachusetts, I believe, that area, the Northeast. And Amy Stewart, I believe she's the author of The Drunken Botanist, so most of her work prior to this has been nonfiction, so it's very heavily researched, and I like that aspect of it. But that was about it. I actually found this story to be really dull and predictable, and the fact that I was able to put this book down and walk away for weeks is a bit telling. I never do that, and I definitely did that with this book, and I really have no intention of continuing on with this series. I don't own any of the other books, and I'm in no rush to go and find them. Like I said, I liked how well researched it was, and I found the bits at the end in which Stewart talks about writing this book, and the information and all the news articles that she references throughout this story. I liked that better than the story itself. So that was a bit of a disappointment to me. The writing was so-so, but it was an easy read. So if you like mysteries and series and kick-ass women, because I mean, Constance and Florette and Norma are very abnormal for their time, and if you're interested in that, you might give it a go, but for me it just was a kind of meh read. Now let's chat about the book that I have mentioned several times on my channel before, because this was another book that carried over for a long time, because I believe I started this for Victober, and I finished it after the new year or right before the new year. And that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that I was not enjoying my reading experience of this. And it was not due to the writing. I cannot fault Emily Bronte's writing at all. I think she's a good author. I definitely marked up different passages of this and dog-eared pages because there are some really, really beautifully written moments. But in general, I just didn't connect with these characters. This book is about horrible people, horrible garbage people who do horrible things to one another and are manipulative, and in attempting to do horrible things to other people, but they just feel worse themselves, but they're under... I'm confounded by this book because I didn't enjoy it. I didn't like hearing about how miserable all of these people are. And I can read stories about unlikable characters. Those are some of my favorite books, but they just were not kind to one another. I will say I enjoy the latter half of this book much, much more than the former half. I thought that there was significantly more plot and the characters were more interesting. And I would be curious to see what this book would have been for me, or what I would have gotten out of it if I had read it in like a classroom type setting in which we would have analyzed the text and talked about all the different characters and the fact that names are repeated for different characters throughout the entire time. But this wasn't the book for me. I am happy that I've read it. I've always said this book intimidates me a lot. of any of the books on my shelves, and it's really not even that long. I've wanted to read it since I read Twilight. Should I even admit that, you guys? But it wasn't for me. I'm happy that I read it and I stuck with it, but in no way am I planning on returning to it. Probably ever. Now for one of the books that I read, just because the other books I was reading, Girl Waits with Gun and Wuthering Heights, that were just not doing it for me, I decided to pick up a book that a lot of people seem to really enjoy, and that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. And to be completely honest, I really didn't know what this story was about. I've heard lots about it and lots about it in the sense that people really enjoyed it. Now, this is an epistolary novel, so everything is letter form, and our main character is Juliet Ashton, and she was a writer during World War II and found a lot of success in her writing during World War II. And this book takes place post-World War II, in which Juliet is trying to figure out what she wants to write. What does she want to do now that she's found success, and really the horizon is full of opportunity for her, whatever she decides to do. And in a series of coincidences, not consequences, coincidences, she receives a letter from a gentleman named Dawsey, who is from the island of Guernsey, and he somehow got one of her old books about a particular author, and he wants to know if there's more books by said author. And they strike up a correspondence, and in doing so, she learns about the island of Guernsey, which is in the English Channel, and how they were affected by the Nazi occupation during World War II, and how they were really left to fend for themselves, and how a book society was struck up very inadvertently, and you learn about some very endearing characters. This book completely snapped me out of the reading slump I'd been in, and I would recommend it to you for that reason, because this book it does have those endearing moments, those endearing characters. There's a huge range of people that are discussed in this book, but I have to say that I still found this book incredibly balanced. I don't tend to gravitate towards super cutesy books now, which is funny because I used to always do that. But this book still talks about the really hard, horrible things that people were exposed to and had to live through while the Nazis controlled their entire lives, and what people experienced during the war and the things that were lost. And the fact that they could kind of combine these really gruesome moments with these really endearing moments, I thought was very, very well done. I definitely recommend this book, although I do want your guys' feedback if the movie is worth watching, because it looks nothing like this book, really at all. So feedback is necessary, but if you're looking for something to kind of bust you out of a reading slump, I would suggest this. I thought it was a lot of fun. Now, for the last book that has lingered for quite a while, I actually started this book in September, but I feel less guilty about this because it is a short story collection, so I was tying up a story before I left it behind, if that makes sense, and that is Uncommon Type by Tom Hanks. And this is, like I said, a short story collection. Let me be redundant. And I really, really enjoyed this book and this collection. There was only one story in particular that I really didn't get on board with, but I think what I find so fun about this book, other than the fact that every story mentions a typewriter at least once or has a plot point to do with a typewriter, it may be a big part of it or just a teeny tiny little part of it, is that really these stories are just about ordinary people, but Hanks puts a little spin on each and every one, in that there are some things that take place in what you could assume is the future, because there's things like space travel for everyday people, or kind of just almost sci-fi-esque things, but they're placed in an everyday setting. It's just the norm. It's not a different society. It's just a different part of society that we don't have. And I appreciated that. These were just people's experiences with life. There are several stories that are about the same group of people. I really, really enjoyed those stories. I found them very interesting and fun. And if you're looking to get started into short stories and you're not sure where to begin, I would definitely recommend this one, because it's nothing too wacky or weird, and they're not connected all throughout. You can just really dip in and out of these stories, and the writing is simple but nice and pretty, if that is a weird thing to say, but I really did enjoy this collection and I'm very excited that I've read it, and I hope he continues to write because I was all about this. And for the last book that I read, which is a book that I also received for Christmas, I will be doing a Christmas book haul soon. Hopefully you'll see it shortly. And I am so stoked to have read this book. It kind of blew me away a little bit, even though I know a lot of people really, really enjoy this book, but I also didn't know this book was so short. And that is Margaret the First by Danielle Dutton. I loved the reading experience of this. I thought this book was way bigger. It's not. It's just baby. It's like 160 pages, but I love that this book, you just swept through it and you got swept into who Margaret Cavendish was. And she's not perfect. She has some really awesome qualities. She doesn't totally care what anybody thinks, or really what anybody thinks about her. And this was in a time in which, what year? It's like the 1600s. It's during the English Civil War. And so she does really amazing things. She was one of the first women to publish under her own name. People knew that it was her. She was into science and she just did all the things that a woman wasn't supposed to do. And she also struggled with the fact that her and her husband could not conceive. And all of this just really created such a dynamic character. And I think part of the reason this book was so easy to read is that the chapters are very short. And I seem to like books like that because I find them very readable and easy and quick to get through. But Dutton is just a really good writer. I was looking up words to learn their meaning, which I always enjoy a challenge, but it didn't seem to slow me down at all, which with some books it does bog me down, but I didn't feel this way in this case. I just thought Margaret was such a dynamic character. At times you're totally rooting for her, and other times you think she's being terrible. And I like that Dutton didn't romanticize this woman's life. She presented her as a real, tangible person, and I really, really enjoyed this book. I don't want to say that I think it will be a favorite of 2019 right now because it's only one of like a few books that I've read thus far this year, but I enjoyed it a lot and it was really nice. This was the first book that I read in its entirety in 2019, and like I said, I read it very, very quickly, like in 2 sittings on the same day, I think. And if you haven't read it, you should. It's really good. It's like really, really good. Alrighty guys, there you have it. Talk about a mixed hat is what I enjoyed and didn't enjoy and only kind of felt meh about. But if you guys have read any of these books, please let me know your thoughts. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you had a meh reaction yourself, I welcome all feedback. But if you guys like this video, please like it. And if you loved it, please subscribe. And we will see you in my next video. Happy reading.